And then he looked at me and he was like, "You're Indian, you're ugly."
Oh my god.
Oh my!
Hi, I'm Chris.
I'm Zain.
Hi, I'm Disha.
Hi, I'm Leah, and this is
ZULA ChickChats.
Okay, hi guys, welcome to this episode of ChickChats, and today we'll be talking about casual racism in Singapore. And first off, for the audience to know of you guys better, maybe you want to state a race?
So I'm Chinese. My mom's actually from Philippines, but I consider myself Chinese.
My mom is Chinese, my dad is Malay, but I identify as Malay.
My mom is Indian, my dad is Indian, so...
Okay, so I'm Eurasian.
Yeah.
My dad's side is German, Chinese. My mom's side is Scottish, Burmese, French.
Wow.
So I think for this episode, we need to define a little bit about what casual racism is.
Casual racism, like the word to like zoom in on is casual, right?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't really like because it makes it seem like it doesn't really have an effect or like it's something that can just be glossed over or something that can just be ignored. Casual racism is something that kind of occurs on smaller levels but more frequently, I think.
But I do think that casual racism is casual racism only on one end, which is on the part of the person who is doing it.
Okay.
It's casual to them because they don't realize it's racism. But to the person who's receiving it, they feel the second word more obviously.
It's quite annoying because like what he said, you know, on the giving end, it can be very, very impactful to the person in a very negative way. People might think, oh yeah, it's just casual, chill lah, like relax, why are you so easily offended? Why are you like so sensitive?
Yeah.
But it's not.
Okay, so taking out my handy dandy research, casual racism is a form of like microaggression, and it comes off as like one-handed remarks relying on negative stereotypes or prejudices towards someone's race or ethnicity. So to talk about our own experience with this, yeah, maybe Chris, you want to share based on your majority perspective first?
I don't think that I have been the victim of casual racism. And I honestly never thought that there was racism in Singapore until I was in university. Like when I had an Indian friend who was like very cool. We always go clubbing with him. And then my other friend made a comment about how so dark we can't see you.
Yeah.
And my Indian friend actually said, don't say that. And he said it very seriously.
Yeah.
But because all like very bro, like having drinks, the guy said it again like after 2-3 minutes. And then he got like serious.
Yeah.
He was like, don't say that. And that's when the mood changed. And I had no idea, even after the first time he said it, right, I thought he was joking. And that was when I realized that it's a real thing lah. If he was Chinese, right, he'd be like epitome of the perfect guy in society because he handsome, he very fit, he very smart, he's studying PhD now. But because he was Indian, we just didn't take him seriously though.
There's this it's a sociological theory called the axis of inequality.
Okay.
So what it does is that it pits people according to gender, sexuality and race. For example, male, you move up. Female, you move down. Then Chinese, for example, the male and female move up, but then when you have a male Indian who was originally on the same level as the unraced male,
Yeah,
he'll
you
move
move
down.
down.
So it made me think of how like that guy that you mentioned like checks so many boxes but can be pulled back so far
Yep.
because of one factor, which is race.
When people ask me, hey, you're from NS, or as in where were you, police or civil defense?
Okay.
But I was from army. I do have my bunkmates who are like Indian, who are Chinese. And it's like super bro, but at the same time, it can be very racist when they ask me, hey, you from which ITE? And the thing is, I'm just like, why do you assume that I was from an
Yeah.
ITE? Or because I'm Malay? There are a lot of Malays in ITE, which of course is true, but it doesn't equate to like you being entitled to say or assume somebody based on the education background, based on their race.
The IT stereotype is often associated with something very negative as well.
Yeah.
They will associate it with like being less than poly or JC. Maybe grades wise, so it doesn't really require as much grades, but there's also like different skill sets involved in it lah. So you
Yeah.
cannot really just make a whole assumption based on that as well.
A lot of the time when I get into like cabs and they immediately like look in the rearview mirror and they're like, are you Singaporean? And I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, but are you Indian? What? I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, oh, you don't sound like other Indians.
Oh.
So there's this benchmark for what an Indian is supposed to sound like and is supposed to look like and is supposed to dress like.
Yeah.
And then suddenly when you kind of know that I resemble an Indian person but I don't fit into that, it's like, oh my god. Like, oh. I felt that I was being held to standards that my Chinese friends are not held to. As a Chinese person, they can be tan, you know, they can dress in this way, they can speak in this way. Somehow for us, it's always, how come you're not like this? How come you're not like that? I thought you're Indian, I thought you're Malay, you know? And then after a while, they're just like, bye.
I do think that it's something that a lot of Singaporeans, even Chinese, go through. When Chinese, you go overseas, you come back with weird accents, right? People ask them that also, but they don't feel as offended when people are like, you don't sound like Chinese.
They don't receive these comments as much, and that's extremely valid because then they are not constantly questioning their identity in the way that minorities are constantly questioning their identity.
Yeah.
And so you're able to take these comments and just kind of like let them pass.
I do have this particular friend of mine who is Malay. At one point, he decides like, you know what, being Malay is so disadvantageous. And the thing is like, people always see me in a very negative light. And he was like, you know what, like, I'm going to be Chinese. So literally he learned Mandarin and then he identifies with a different name. And to me that's really sad because like,
It's so scary.
like, why are you not proud of being Malay? Oh, but there was one time I was so triggered, like, you don't even know, I was so pissed off. Okay, so I was working in this internship company and then somebody just like shouted over the cubicle, hey, you go ask that Malay boy to help you carry.
Oh, that's so awful.
And then I'm just like, why must you like literally say the word Malay boy?
You wouldn't say go ask that Chinese boy to carry something for you, right? Just ask that person's name lah. Or
Yeah,
ask that
yeah,
guy's
exactly,
name.
like you will never say
You will
or
never
ask.
say Chinese boy, like in that sense.
Actually, that's a very good point. I think that
Yeah.
a very easy way to spot everyday racism is to substitute that race they're gonna say with your own race.
Yeah, sometimes like the Malays play soccer, that kind of thing. It's not necessarily a negative stereotype, but at the same time, you're just like, why do I need to be able to play soccer just because I'm this
putting
race?
people in a box.
Yeah, correct.
Honestly, like I say, if it's like a Malay can play soccer, right? Then the casualism will come if let's say a Chinese guy plays soccer. Wow, Chinese can play soccer. I thought you all play basketball.
Ah,
That
okay,
kind of
okay,
thing, you know?
okay. But for me, okay, so like I would say one instance where I myself was casually racist. So I was young and ignorant. Now I realize my mistakes. I actively try to correct them and I don't do that anymore. When I was much younger, because I was more tan, the closest race I looked to is Malay. I just didn't want to be associated with being Malay.
Right.
I always thought like I mixed enough, I should be associated with being Chinese. You know, someone pointed out to me before like, oh my, you were damn offended when I asked you whether you're Malay. I was damn shocked, yeah. Then I was like,
Yeah.
why would you be shocked? You know. Then I realized like, why the fuck am I so offended at being Malay? I then realized that it was associated with not being the majority race, not being of privilege. Like they think I'm Malay, then they don't want to talk to me or all these kind of
Yeah.
things. It's like ingrained in my brain that it was not a positive kind of like reaction. I guess you cannot really fault sometimes the majority for being very ignorant, but at the same time they do need to be educated and they need to realize their mistakes.
That idea of like being ignorant, right? Reminded me of an incident when I was at the museum with my friend. So this Chinese guy, and this like little boy, he cannot have been more than 5. He like comes up to us and then he looks at my friend and he's like, "You're so handsome."
Okay.
And then we're like, "Oh, so cute." Like,
Yeah.
okay. And then he looked at me and he was like, "You're Indian. You're ugly."
Oh my!
I was like, "Demon firstly."
Oh!
Yeah, like, I was so shocked. I didn't know what to say. Like, and then my friend was like, "That's not a nice thing to say." But the boy just didn't understand.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't come out of the womb thinking that Indians are ugly. He had to have heard that at some point or
Yeah.
been told that at some point. Like, I just feel like these things need to be called out as early as possible.
Yeah.
So they don't grow up thinking that it's okay to think things like this or
Yeah.
that it's just this is like the natural state of affairs.
Okay, there's this thing called schemas. Schemas are mental boxes that we have. So as we grow up, these are things that we use to compartmentalize people. So race is a schema that we use. And the thing about schema is that they make our lives very easy. Because when we think of somebody who plays football, for example, athletic, probably a big size, we need to think so much when we go looking for him. We just recognize the person.
Yeah.
The problem happens when we take schema and oversimplify it and then assume that everybody is like that. And the issue is not so much the fact that we compartmentalize people, it is with the value judgments that happen when we associate a box with a negative value.
We talked a lot about the different instances where this happens and
Yeah.
stuff. Do you call it out?
I think I call it out sometimes. Most of the time I just like post on my Insta story, which is
Okay.
not considered calling it out. And I know that in doing that I'm contributing to the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my honest answer.
Mine, I don't call it out, eh. And the thing is, when people make jokes about it, I just like, laugh.
Oh really?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, these kind of remarks, right, they are being kind of like ingrained in our heads through jokes, through like comedians, stand-up comedies. They make fun of like every single race. And the thing is, some of these jokes are so everlasting that even I myself as a Malay, I'm like, oh yeah, it's true lah,
Yeah.
correct lor. Then
Yeah.
nothing to say about it lor. So okay lah.
So for me, I'm not the person who gets affected by casual racism because I feel like I'm of privilege, right, and I don't get it a lot. I feel that it's only right that I try to educate other people on like why this is right and why this is not right. I feel like not everybody has to take it upon themselves to do so.
Yeah.
But it has to come from a little bit from the majority as well. But I'm not someone who's gonna be on social media like, hey, don't do this kind of thing.
You can also like cold call people and be like, are you racist? If you are, I have something to say.
Yeah, I think you just have to be more mindful about what you say. Hopefully, like because of whatever that we talked about, right, it gives you more awareness of what you're actually putting out there and saying to your friends, whether or not you intend to insult them or not.
I do think that call-out culture
Yeah.
is very bad because a lot of it happens on social media. They are very often a lot harsher than it needs to be.
It's like exaggerated and escalated
Yeah.
to like so many levels more.
So my concern is that when minorities see that their friend is angry at this person, they will take that kind of language, that kind of framing, and use it to point out when a friend or somebody else is racist towards them, which I feel is very bad.
The most important thing to do in this climate is to have conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to talk to like friends about their experiences, because all our lived experiences are so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And only then can you like bridge gaps with like empathy. Like I sound like a motivational speaker.
Low key. Did y'all see it happen? I don't know, on a news site, like the one where we posted, the child was like, oh, like, I don't want to sit there like very smelly or something like that. And then the guy was like, oh, like, you know, this person has worked so hard like for many long hours, blah blah blah, and explained like the situation. And then the boy had to sit next to the foreign worker. And I feel that this was a very strong example of how it's taught well. At the same time, it's how you should teach children nowadays, you know, to be this way.
It's so much easier to teach someone something than to when they're in their 20s or 30s to try and undo 20 years of thinking in a certain way.
Coming to the end of this discussion, do you think that casual racism would tone down a lot more in the future?
People will be more aware, but if the culture as it currently is online, right, it is not going to get better anytime soon.
I think a lot of it has to do with like the whole cancel culture. Like the extent to which nowadays cancel culture is being used in any kind of like social issue, right? People need to understand that yes, while calling out issues is important, you need to do it in a way that it's not like filled with like so much aggression.
I don't think it will improve. I mean, given like the current situation of the media where it's so easy for you to just create memes about other person of different race. So even people who are Malay, they're making fun of their own race, people who are Indian making fun of their own race. It's because of this kind of content that people tend to push up because they think it's funny, right? It goes into the minds of people who are consuming them, and it can manifest to higher levels. For example, if there is like a foreign like Angmo boss who wants to employ me, and then like he looks at all this different kind of content and he'll be like, oh, I don't want Malay because Malays are da 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 da. You know?
I think that jokes and comics have a space in society, and I think that them making fun of races should be allowed because it gives voice very often to the unheard people.
But at the same time, some people don't know how to be objective when they listen to these things. So it's like, is it the duty of the comedian to be educational, or it's like the duty of the people to take this and be objective about it lah?
No, I think jokes are fine as long as it's done in a good spirit. Immediately as soon as one person gets offended, right?
Cut.
Yeah, just stop lah.
For as long as we look at each other through the lens of race, right? For as long as we have to put race on all the official forms that we fill in, we will constantly be seeing each other through the lens of race.
So today we talked about casual racism, and I guess from the gist of this entire video, the main points are a lot of people have to be a little bit more educated as well as have a bit of empathy to everyone around them lah. So if you guys have opinions about this particular issue, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below, and also let us know what else you want us to talk about next time on ChickChats. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe.
Bye!